Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. Is the normal music on? What the heck? I don't know. Anyway, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Komi. More specifically, well, not specifically yet, Taboritsky's Komi. Last video, we started working on some democratic implosion, and we're getting pretty close to causing it to all collapse in on itself. We're doing some okay stuff with getting Taboritsky some influence. And so, hopefully, we might just be able to get him in charge soon enough. So we left off with one event, and we're going to go ahead and read that event. Mr. Sorokin, I've got another letter from a concerned parent for you. It's about... Let me guess, Nadia. It's about the curriculum. Sorokin hoped that as a school administrator, he would be one of the few public employees in Syktyvkar to not have to worry about the obnoxious politicization of every facet of life that persuaded the city. Evidently, he had been sorely mistaken. While political status shouldn't determine employment, he felt that teachers should have standards about their biases. Whichever teacher was the subject of all these angry letters to his office eventually did not. Here was a problem. A number of parents were noticing that their children came home with skewed understandings of Russian history. One letter described a 7-year-old who, upon being asked what she learned in history that day, replied that Russia had been a land of opportunity before Lenin had the king shot and brought women into the workplace. Another described a writing assignment apparently requesting that students write about what the nation means to you and what should be done to those who don't respect it. There were 8 similar letters, and the school was legally required to be politically impartial. Something had to be done. Sorokin started by requesting that Nadia look into his teachers' backgrounds, and she quickly came back with a likely suspect. Viktor Gugakov, a history teacher for 6 months, had both a criminal record and an OVRI membership card. He was fired immediately, but Sorokin could only wonder how such an individual could be hired at all. Though there aren't dangerous extremists in administration, are there? Probably industrial equipment after this. Yeah. This is just... Okay, so this is Elena Yevgeny. Okay. Amidst the candidates themselves voicing their platforms and debating the others, several party members have been allowed to take the stand and do the same. Some provided endorsements, some made rallying speeches, and some simply took the time to plead unity across the entirety of the center. Elena and Yevgeny both gave 2 short speeches in support of their candidates, hoping to garner up some last-minute support for both. I know Alexei personally. Deputy Kosygin would be a safe, sane choice for a healthy democratic Komi, and perhaps with time Russia as a whole, in a region and world so corrupted by undemocratic tyrants, the policies of Deputy Kosygin would be the light shining against the darkness. I speak for many of us when I say that Stalina is a bulwark. She will protect your rights, your freedoms, and this country from radicals. No other candidate is as crucial to ensuring a safe and just democratic process as she is. I promise she will never let you, nor the people of Komi, down. Both finished their speeches to respective cheers and boos. As they both sat down in their seats, they gave each other the same look they did a year ago. Whatever the results would be, they were in this together, and they spoke their minds just as anyone should. Although they're not running, their opinions are just as valuable. Are they? Kosygin, that's nice. Pause if you want to read it, since I've read it in the Democratic series and a couple of the other series. To Moscow. As debate concluded, and the regular, albeit mandatory, applause filled the room, the Democratic delegates were asked to select the winner of a debate on slipping popularity numbers. Comrades of the Assembly, now is the time to count these votes and determine the actions of his party in regards to number crisis. By a margin of 35, Comrade Vesnetsky's plan, rather the lack of one, has been passed. Lisinski's ideas were simple. If there is no action needed, there is no problem. Polls are simply that, polls. The number will always move back and forth, and there is no reason to assume that this will change. If the nature of the polls do not change, then there will be no reason to change anything. And after all, if there is no action needed, there is no problem. Democracy would go on, and Komi would not be blessed by the continued rule of a Democratic Party. All from not overreacting to one stupid poll. Well, let's hope it works! What was I going to improve? Equipment? Equipment. Fosnetsky, I'll go ahead and pause, let you guys read it. Bam. Sociums are clawing out a little bit. And now we're going to go ahead and see who is going to end up earning majority. Leonid Volkov sighed as he read the endless pile of papers on his desk. The polling data was looking shaky, and the RMP had lost 2 seats to the PSD over the last month, as their poll numbers tanked due to local scandals. As Shavarvik's campaign manager, it was his job to ensure that his party candidates could actually be elected, but the passionary-affiliated parties didn't make that easy. Voters didn't tend to respond well to overt racism. It was as simple as that. He would tell candidates this, then they would go on stage and start ranting about Jews and the small nations, and Volkov would have to just sit there and watch the ship sink before his very eyes. He had originally worked with the entirety of the Passionary Society, but recently decided to focus on the mainstream wing of the party, Shafarvik's Russian National Party. They could at least hide their intentions, and Volkov was at least skilled enough to get people to listen to Shafarvik. Getting the Passionary into the assembly was not an easy task, but Leonid Volkov wouldn't let that stop him. People responded well to anti-communist rhetoric, they responded well to their economic policies, and they responded well to Russian nationalism. If he could keep Shavarvik and his peers to continue walking the narrow line, Volkov could work miracles. Volkov then had a realization. He was critical to getting Shafarvik elected. Shafarvik was crucial to getting the rest of Passionary. Therefore, he could probably get himself a raise. Holiday bonus seems like a good idea, doesn't it? Oh, my bad. Kosygin is announcing his opposition, kind of based, but unfortunately, it's not going to work out. Well, you read it a bit more and go. Costing to secure the nomination, onwards to the polls. Go ahead, suppress the left a little bit. Why not? You goddamn liberals! Yevgeny sighed with a look of visual disappointment on his face. Although Vosnensky was rightfully defeated on the ballot, to the elatement of both National Assembly members, Carlson's nomination deeply upset many in the BSD. Yevgeny was no different. Although he had pledged to defend democracy, was this really who he had to fight for? Was there really no other choice? I know you're disappointed, Yevgeny. I can only imagine what you feel. She tried to console her colleague and friend, yet it seemed to have little effect on him. Much like the woman Still herself, Yevgeny was seemingly dead set on his iron-willed ideals. That is, until he stopped briskly on a street corner. With a deep inhale, he released the tension in his body and turned to face Elena. It's no big deal. I know we were upset during the nomination, but I want to talk to some of them. Tell them that there's still hope. We may not be the happiest, but we're willing to hold on to much of the same. Even with Kosygin. With a wave goodbye, he crosses the busy street. Elena, with a small smile on her face, thinks about what the future may hold with his tenacity. Tolerable, but only just. Only just. So coalition negotiations are almost done. Next we got election day preparations. An election is not something that can be organized on the spot, even if the radicals believe otherwise. We must now begin the process of readying the polling booths, setting out flyers, organizing locations, and more of a standard procedure that bores our legislators to no end. As usual, we will call up ready volunteers to do their duty to democracy and do these tasks for us. And in all of this, of course, we must also be aware of the radicals, for their ideas of preparation, something much more sinister. Yeah. He had gone and truly done it now. It was supposed to be a simple debate between Shafarvik and Deputy Morozov, the only native Komi in the assembly. He told Shafarvik to focus on the failures of a coalition and the economy. Morozov had brought up Shafarvik's small nation concept. Shafarvik then decided to explain the concept, and it wasn't exactly flattering for the RNP. Volkov had thought that Morozov was just a token representative, but it appears the Komi politicians were more skilled than he had thought. This was not the apocalypse, however. Sure, data looked poor after the debate, but Volkov had procedure for these type of situations. First, Radio Free Syktyvkar. Ivanov and Ivanov were the best free advertising money couldn't buy. But if he slipped them a few donations, he could certainly get them to weave a new narrative. Wozensky never failed to deliver a new scandal, and Ivan Ivanov could give Shafarvik a flattering, friendly interview, where Shafarvik could moderate his message for the public. Secondly, send out some press statements to the news and convince them that Shafarvik's words were taken out of context. Once all that had been done, get the public's attention onto something else. One of his militias had found a KPK weapon stash near a deputy's home. He could twist that into a proper scandal. As Volkov went over his plan, he knew this was salvageable. He started writing the first letters, and his new narrative began to form. Fake news, folks. Absolutely fake. Vologda is taking out Kostroma right now as we speak. Alright, so we finished up both of our research just about the same time. So we'll get some new computing devices. And new guns. Let's see if we can get working on these new guns by the time that the elections come out. Time has come to prepare for our elections. Let us be done. We have to make sure we're doing it right. Polling booths will need to be set up and counters will need to be hired. We must ensure that the election day goes as planned. Of course, we are presented with a few options to make the election go through how we want it to. We can make it easier for our voters by easing up on registration, making sure we have enough polling places. This would make sure everyone ends up with a chance to vote. However, that could come with the cost of giving the opposition and radicals too much power. It could be safer to invest in some voter suppression in the pillarized neighborhoods. That means we won't have to worry about the undesirable people starting to meddle with our democracy. We can make a choice, and our democracy could well hang in the balance. You know what? People need to vote. And I can do that because it's not going to matter too much there. Let's ensure internal stability. In recent days, it's been reported that our party is a mess in certain areas, such as the fact that debates over sometimes trivial things can run hot and wild between our deputies, as well as growing factionalism and refusal of cooperation between party members. While normally this has been allowed under the perpetrator's defense of freedom of opinion and expression, the upcoming election is the most critical in our history. The Democratic Party cannot permit these problems any longer. Through distinct methods, we will ensure that everyone sits down and shuts up. united as one party. No longer shall the chamber erupt into argument every other speech, and no longer shall we tolerate the cracks between our wings. We will be as one, together. We must be, for the radicals shall come as one as well. Now that works. Volkov was stumped. There was a district that the RNP wanted in their hands. The district's elections were a while away, but to steal their district, things needed to be set in motion as soon as possible. The district's former deputy, a DSNP candidate, was not planning to run for re-election. His successor was sufficiently milquetoast, and Volkov could certainly find a more charismatic candidate. That wasn't the issue here. The real problem was that the district had a large minority demographic, mostly Jewish. The RNP wanted to marginalize this demographic, ensure that the National Assembly was serving the Russian nation's best interest. To Volkov, it was a noble goal, but a difficult one to get into the Assembly. Obviously, none of the Eurasianists would do. He found his man in the form of a passionary society member who owned a successful business in the district. He was a gregarious guy, and even appeared on radio once. That was a candidate settled. Next was the issue of demographics. Volkov wasn't sure to get a majority. How to get a majority in the district. Then he realized he didn't need a majority, just a plurality. There we go. Volkov just needed to make the district apathetic enough to lower turnout, all while drumming up support behind his candidate. A smear campaign against the DSNP and their upcoming candidate would ensure that there was no threat, and soon the RNP would have their seat. Volkov pushed up his glasses. If he started now, this election could have effects even beyond the single district. Every election is determined by the people who show up. Are these the new events after cutting room floor? Well, the men stood by the sill, calmly, and waited their turn to jump. Tokyo Exchange Secretary. Out with a crash. Scavenge for some loot. Maybe we might do that. Yeah, why not? Let's watch for the radicals. The radicals have never believed in a democratic process, even if they say otherwise. While they've been rather quiet in the days leading up to the election, it's always possible they may come out of shadows at any time. The chess masters on either side still have aces up their sleeve, and there's no telling exactly what they have in store. Observations of the paramilitaries are necessary, and any left or right-wing activity will be snuffed out and found. If they have any funny tricks they wish to play, we will know, and we will fight back. What do we got going on downhill here? Can invest in some infrastructure, get a free infrastructure. That's not too bad. Could do an industrial investment as well, though. Let's get some industry. Gulf has been taken over by some new leadership. Well, gentleman, welcome to Dubai. We need to keep an eye on the radicals, ensure they don't subvert the election process for their own goals. Their every move will need to be closely scrutinized to ensure the safety of our elections. Who knows what the communists or fascists would do if given the chance? They could very well corrupt the process and take over the power themselves through manipulation and intimidation. To keep a closer watch on the radicals, more informers will need to be placed within their organization. Perhaps a few bugs in their telephones could also do the trick. We must know their plans before they can take any action on them. No, communists should not expect privacy. They don't even believe in private property. Why should they expect in private time? A person should always feel safe in their home, whether from inside or out. While they do not dare touch our cities, bandits and thugs have been known from the countryside, seeking to rob and maim to their heart's content. In addition, the German bombings have been a constant source of casualties, blasting apart anyone that is unfortunate enough to be near their dastardly weapons. People cannot vote if they are busy with other things, such as, surviving. Therefore, we must embark on a program to cleanse the bandits from our countryside. guard our borders from any foreign incursions, and defend ourselves from the air raids. Only then shall democracy flourish. Not too bad, not too bad. I'll just close that up. I'm not too interested in keeping an eye on that. We could do a raid real quick. You know what? Let's do a raid. Because we'll have time. Initiate the raid. Should be paid. Beautiful. Now that was easy. What do we want to get working on? Maybe research facilities. Yeah. Protected people. Express for the left a little bit more. Yeah, suppress them. Calculate the bombing intervals. Each and every week brings hellish Armageddon down upon our lands. The Nazi bastards rain down their bombs upon the people of Russia. New orphans are created every day, and hospitals always filled to the brim for days after, especially Tuesdays, for that's when they all come. The Germans are as predictable as they are evil. It is no coincidence the bombs always rain down at specific times, and more on certain days than others. Then their Wehrmacht seeks to enjoy their coffee breaks at their designated hours and days, and not any other. This will not stop our democracy. All it takes is a little calculation, and any interruption of the election will no longer come from the air. God, the Social Democrats are not having a good go at it. Neither are the Communists, actually. CSR versus Siberian Black Army. Interesting. They went Decemberist. Not a bad way to go. I was thinking about if I'm gonna hop back into Tomsk, maybe doing Decemberists. But hey, let's go into the unknown. Months of rigorous preparation. Days of campaigning. Enjoy or dread it, participate in it, and flee from it. The election comes all the same. Now comes the trial of democracy, and the ruling with it. Each and every preparation that we have done for this event will now either pay off or let us down. This critical election decides our fate and the future. Some doubt our chances and others wish us dead, but no matter what happens, democracy will always prevail in the end. Top 10's... What was that? Top 10 pictures taken before disaster. Now comes the time to decide the location where the polling bases should be. There are many safe locations where polling booths would fit right in, places that are safe from German bombers and political extremists. While we definitely will make use of these locations, we do have some more less safe choices. We can make some strategic mistakes and place polling places in disagreeable neighborhoods in more exposed, dangerous locations. That way we could discourage some people who we might not want to vote and assure the safety of our power in the elections. You know what? No. Every voter deserves to be able to vote safely. Tomorrow was the big day. Perhaps it wouldn't last. Perhaps all of their work would burn down in flames. Perhaps Komi wasn't going to survive the cast of a ballad. Despite all this, Elena and Yevgeny sat down one last time together as allies. For all of their hard work, the last thing they wanted to do before it all went down was head for a drink. Ready? Ready. Oh god, I don't know how to pronounce that. Zadorove! With the clink of two glasses, both assembly members took their first sips of their drinks. Yevgeny coughs a bit with a cheerful expression. Elena simply sits calmly and downs her liquor, the bitterness trapping her tongue. Vodka, above all else, was more than just cheap entertainment and a staple of the anarchic diet. It was a truth sealer. I didn't think we'd get that far without being shot, to be honest. Oh, nonsense. If you keep thinking like that, Elena, I'd be surprised if you don't drop dead from this vodka. Holding in their laughter, the two finally break bread and chuckle childishly. Perhaps in the past year, they would never expose this laid-back attitude to one another. Political enemies, PSD dog, SMR freeloader, all that distrust and hatred disappeared with a few sips. After sitting silently for a while and drinking a bit more, Yevgeny pushes his drink to the side and faces his friend. Hey, Elena? Promise me something over one more drink, huh? Wow, what's the matter? About to tell me your life story? Nah, this is way better. You and me, no matter what happens tomorrow. I want us to stick together. We came this far to protect our democracy. I don't want to jeer at your side of the aisle again. Although originally taken off guard, she nods intently and offers her hand. Shake on it. For life. With a firm hold of her hand, they would form a spiritual bond which perhaps could survive long enough to see their future come to fruition. A future for all of us. In vino veritas. There we go. Do I want to weaken democratic influence? Maybe not. Oh, Kaya, okay. Sabirisk is going after Kemerovo. So the war zone overlapping, which is going to be interesting. I'm hoping I see someone other than Kemerovo win just because it would be a nice mix-up. Now we wait, don't we? We have received news of severe violence erupting in many of our polling locations. In total, 3 people have been killed and 19 have been wounded by paramilitary violence. This started to discourage many other voters, and some of our polling places are even closing down. It's not known if it was communist or fascist paramilitaries that carried out the attacks, and it very well could be both of them. If our goal was to scare voters, it's definitely working. Although this does not mean that they are only scaring away our voters. Unfortunately, this doesn't bode well for our election process, and we may see less voting than we expected. Paramilitary threats combined with fears of German bombers, even after the efforts we took to keep polling places safe, have influenced many in their decision not to participate. This is an unacceptable violation of their rights. Ooh. More violence has begun to grow as more paramilitaries are taking to the streets. We now have reports that right extremists are intensely protesting our administration in the election. They are claiming we have illegally taken action against their movement and ideology by hurting them in the elections and stopping their supporters from voting. Now these militias have begun causing a large amount of violence, and conflicts with paramilitaries and police have begun to spiral out of control. The rightists are also declaring the election is rigged, even though the election is not yet over. I wonder if you can make any comparisons. Oh, God. This has hurt the legitimacy of our election, and as it appears, we are deliberately trying to keep the rightists out of power. Supporters of the right-winger parties are even calling for the resignation of our government. Our police are still trying to keep the violence confined to only limited areas. But it appears the paramilitaries will only continue to gain strength until the elections are over and the government secures power. Oh, God, when will it end? Fuck. I didn't expect the Tabby game to be mildly relevant. Consolidation has been inaugurated. Deputies of the Republic. We can surely agree that Komi has seen incredible progress in recent years. We've made great progress in recovering from bombing, slowing the death tolls, attracting people to live in our great republic. I do not wish harm any of those advances. However, I believe a new course of action is the right choice for Komi's future. We must not be satisfied with the current status quo, which brings such inequality and chaos to our republic. We must also not adhere blindly to an economic system that creates such inequality within our people and places such heavy restrictions upon the common man. If we are to develop our republic, and we must introduce a stable democracy, sweeping market reforms, and a greater openness to the outside world, Komi must see greater liberalization of its economy in order to bring about a truly equal society. I call upon the National Assembly to stand for democracy and reform, so that our republic may be the shining beacon for all of Russia's people. Kostygin's speech fit such a prominent, experienced politician. However, Kostygin's critics asked how exactly these reforms would bring equality to the common man, and if Kostygin's speech was too optimistic and betrayed his tendency to focus too much upon urbanites and intellectualism. Nevertheless, only time will tell if President Kostyagin is the right choice for Komi. A little extra political power. And there he is, the Chad with the hat. We'll get a little bit of extra political power before he gets booted out. Results of the election are in, and our Democratic coalition has been declared the victors. However, there are not enough seats in the legislative form majority. The Rightists have become a huge power after the election, and they almost eclipse the entire government. We've been forced into minority rule, stuck cooperating with the Rightist extremists. This makes it much more difficult for us to actually move forward with our agenda. With a large rightist opposition, we will have to appease the far right if we want to get anything done. This makes it much more difficult to stabilize our government after the election turmoil. Some of the new legislators were even caught during the election alongside paramilitaries and militias. The far right has gained considerable power. At least it wasn't a total loss, right? Right? It appears that we have seriously underestimated how unpopular our administration is. Protests and riots are getting more violent as our police force cannot handle the growing number of people in the streets. There are even reports of far-right attacks on members of our coalition. Paramilitaries and militia from the far right have even gone into several armed conflicts with the police. With the chaos growing, we're beginning to suspect an incoming far-right fascist coup. There are reports of rightist party leaders planning a march out of a legislature building and other government offices. Uh-oh. There are also reports of soldiers disobeying orders and even joining the paramilitaries. We must act before the situation goes out of control. There is a large possibility of disloyal parts of the military joining with the militias to coup our leadership. We have to secure our government buildings if the rightists are planning to strike. Oh, it may be too late. Yeah, so this opens up political instability. In order to ensure that our regime is stable and we are not couped or counter-couped by our enemies, we must keep things as tightly controlled as possible before we restore order. If our legitimacy reaches zero, we will be unable to maintain control and a coup will be carried out. It will be critical to take all possible measures in order to prevent an overflow of our order. Our current legitimacy is 42, and it's decaying by 1 every day. The most likely threat comes from the right wing. Left wing is non-threatening. Center is in power. Right wing is extremely threatening. The reports of Komi's political system is now accompanied by the shattering of order on the streets, as paramilitaries rage and the police desperately try to restore stability to the city. Less scrupulous citizens have resorted to simply stealing what they need from shops and businesses. Some of these new brigands are political radicals forcibly expropriating goods from what they see as either bourgeois thieves or plotters against the nation. Others are desperate members of Syktyvkar's poor, simply trying to survive in the midst of a turmoil. Most are somewhere in between, disaffected citizens who have lost faith in democratic government to give them the basic necessities of life. The sheer magnitude of these lootings, their spontaneity, and their low priority given the abundance of more severe dangers to the Republic have disincentivized a serious police response, making it unlikely that many of the thousands of perpetrators will face justice in the near future. While not a direct political challenge of state security, these lootings symbolize the grave fact that many of Komi's denizens no longer respect law and order. Only time will tell whether police absence on the streets is a temporary case or a permanent surrender of authority. But things do not look good for the Republic. Well, this can't be good. Lose 5 legitimacy, increase in right power. And so we're going to do none of these. Syktyvkar was burning. It seems that the efforts to ensure the Central would win the election were not as strong as once believed. Violence by extremists was reported 6 hours ago. 2 hours ago, the first Molotov was thrown. Now, the city streets of Syktyvkar became an all-out war zone, with different government factions determined to wrestle control over the facilities of government. It seems that the worst-case scenario had become a reality, and now was a time of survival. Elena and Yevgeny were shocked, initially. How could all of their efforts have failed? Was the center not united enough? Perhaps the extremists had gained too much strength. Whatever the case was, both of them had been drafted to serve under an emergency government under Kosygin. Their goal was no longer to save democracy, but save Komi entirely from the ever-encroaching threat of radical takeover. Yevgeny, Elena said, shakily gripping her hastily issued pistol in its holster. Is this a bad dream? His expression did not give her any condolences. Perhaps behind his usual carefree and steely demeanor, he was terrified too. The only way to wake up is to work together. This time for real. I know we can do it. Placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, the two pass by some soldiers and walk into an emergency command room, ready to take action once more. The strength of the center is put to the test. We could raid St. George again. Let's do that. Sheeta versus Amor. They refuse tribute? Okay, well. We'll see how well that goes for him. As if the attacks from the left were bad enough, the government is now facing serious challenges from the other direction. Right-wing violence has often taken the backseat to communist militancy in the eyes of Komi's state and police forces, especially with the preponderance of left-wing terrorist attacks in the past several weeks. As they are finding out all too late, Komi's establishment has seriously underestimated the threat the right poses to the government. Radical right-wing passionarists shelled the Presidium and its immediate surroundings with mortar rounds during the press conference, killing several journalists. By sheer chance, the blast failed to kill any politicians, although 2 Communist Party legislators received light injuries. Right-wing parties were not present at the event. Lev Gumilov informed reporters that the passionarists were having a meeting at the time, although he failed to elaborate on the reason for convening or the topics covered. Several passionarist politicians, declining to provide evidence, alleged that the attack was a false flag by police or radical leftists, and completely denied complicity. While the journalists' families are left to mourn their dead, the government must confront the fact that it is under full assault from not one but 2 extremist factions. Syktyvkar's experts have faith that the government is already struggling to contain the communists, can quickly devote adequate resources to this new crisis, but the past few weeks have shown one thing for certain. There's always a way the situation can get worse. The jackboot, poised to stomp on Komi. So that'll increase our little decay rate. Scores as left. Raid successful. Very nice. We'll do that. Treasure. Driving Syktyvkar, with its poorly kept roads and tendency towards street violence, has never been easy. Cars tend to be reserved for businessmen and politicians, people who value privacy, speed and security in their travels, and have money or connections to get to the best transport possible. This makes road travel prestigious, as well as a target for those who seek to stabilize the Republic. 3 days ago, simultaneous detonation of several explosive devices on the roads and bridges in central Syktyvkar paralyzed the city for several hours, as first responders were unable to reach the scene. Despite the devastation caused by these bombings, the perpetrators appear to have attempted to minimize casualties. Explosions occurred in the middle of the night. The primary target were the roads surrounding the Presidium building and several prominent local businesses. However, they still claim 2 lives, and 5 other people have been hospitalized. The bombers are currently unidentified and remain at large, but targeting of local elites suggests that they belong to radical leftist movements. This is a sobering day for the Republic. The bombings took Syktyvkar's already beleaguered police force completely by surprise. Justice becomes less likely with each passing hour, while the militant communists become ever more organized. The road to chaos. Well, it's not like we're going to have to worry about legitimacy here for much longer. And the passionaries have overthrown the government. The rising shocked the current government, in the beginning with attacks on police officers and loyal civilians. In Syktyvkar, reports of violence screamed to the city hall all too quickly as gunshots and screams became louder, drawing close. Loyalists met the paramilitaries in the streets and alleys, but they were ambushed, trapped by a hail of fire from the windows and above and from the cellars below. And as they battled, so were civilians caught in the crossfire. Confusion increased as units were lost in the depths of the city. Others were directed to the wrong places by their superiors. The battles had become too intense, and the men began to desert, but the passionary pursued them, even to the river, where the men attempted to surrender, but were instead paid for their loyalty with their lives. Bodies flowed down the water as pleas rang throughout. Bridges were taken, important roads were blocked, secured by patrols. The way leading out of the city was sealed, as were those getting in. Attempts were made to break out for reinforcements or for escape, but they were crushed. Soon enough, it was all over. They swarmed the halls, intimidating the legislatures as they were opening today's session with guns and clubs. They arrested those they had on their list, adding to them anyone who resisted or was thought to have resisted. Shots were common, and the bodies streamed out, as did those who lived to be sent away. When the old government dissolved, they made haste to see either new constitution instituted. Then it was declared, and their triumph made law, as a cheerful Gumalov was sworn in as the leader of this new government. For the legitimization of their overthrow, the passionary was now in control of what was once the Republic. Our guide shall lead us through. So, we have a couple options here. In theory, we could just go from here. But I'm thinking we might do a little additional coup. We might do a few more coups. That's what I'm thinking. And the reason for that is that we can just get Taboritsky in charge off the bat, and I think that sounds a bit more interesting. So I think we can... Okay, let's start with social sphere permutation. It's going to increase Gumalov's influence, though, but it's not the worst. The Russian people at large do not understand Eurasianism. They deride us as esoterics, or worst, leftists, for our humane and progressive understanding of our brothers' ethnoses. Our message must be propagated throughout the Republic so that the people come to understand what it is we fight and why our cause is worthy of their support. So let's withdraw some forces real quick. So it's been kept the same, more or less. Let's sideline Taboritsky. Taboritsky is a madman, gripped by his delusions of grandeur, but he has his uses. As the only notable monarchist in the Republic, like-minded men flock to his banner, along with many of the Orthodox Church's more fervent defenders. He thus has a large contingent of well-trained, fanatical soldiers at his command. We would do well to court him. If we can bring him under our influence, perhaps we can sideline him more easily later on. Draw our forces a bit more. Get our legitimacy decaying even more. Center is threatening. Any person with even a grain of political literacy is aware that the far left has always had a tense relationship with organized religion. Komi's communists have been vocal in their displeasure at Christianity, especially as churches become bolder in their activity, with the withdrawal of a front from Syktyvkar. The days pass. This mostly took the form of angry rallies outside religious institutions, but normality seems to have ascended to a higher plane since the beginning of our political turmoil. A church associated with Syktyvkar's conservative movement has recently been burned to the ground in what appears to be the most flagrant arson attack in several years. Fortunately, it was empty, the blaze having struck roughly 2 hours after the end of Sunday services. Officers were initially unable to find a perpetrator or motive until the presumed arsonist mailed a letter to the police station filled with anti-religious invectives and sections from the Communist Manifesto. Rumors about the arsonist and the potential future targets have spread like wildfire, I see what you did there, through Syktyvkar's religious community, and several prominent churches have employed police or militia guards. Even as in Komi's perpetually agitated political climates, churches have largely remained safe from direct assault. The fact that previously untouchable targets are falling under attack is a testament to the undeniable decline of political order and state power. The only thing that can be done now is pray that the situation won't degrade to an even greater degree. Is nothing sacred anymore? I like what you did there too. Gumilov sat in his office, reviewing the letter in his hand. It was addressed to Taboritsky, leader of the Society of the Restoration of the Russian Empire, a minor right-wing faction. However, Taboritsky also had elite stormtroopers, fanatics who would gladly die for their leader and his cause. Taboritsky was fanatic in his loyalty to Tsar Alexei I, who he believed escaped execution by the Bolsheviks. This posed a number of problems for Gumilov. Firstly, Tsar Alexei was almost certainly dead, so Taboritsky's mental health could be called into question. This meant he could be unreliable. Secondly, Gumilov was not a monarchist. He doesn't care for the Tsars, and he honestly doesn't like Taboritsky at all. In his letter, Gumilov worked around their differences, appealing to Taboritsky's desire to see Russia's borders expanded to their peak under the empire. Some of these claims are natural, retaking Moscow, Ukraine, and Kazakhstan, among others. Gumilov also made some more extravagant claims, including hinting at the possible annexation of Alaska. Gumilov felt ridiculous proposing such a thing, but Taboritsky seemed like the kind of man who would make such extravagant claims. Was this all really worth it? Taboritsky possessed some very elite paramilitaries, but they were also necessary in order to overthrow the Republic. Taboritsky was a strong orator, with a decent support base, including the monarchists, and Gumilov's coup could lead to a power struggle if he failed to keep them in check. Gumilov still held the letter in his hand. He could just tell his assistants to burn the thing and just do without Taboritsky's monarchist. Alternatively, he could send the ridiculous letter to Taboritsky and hope he accepted the offer. Send it. We need him on our side. Anyway, I'm going to cut it here, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for watching. If you like this video, leave a like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you want to see more of this content in the future, hit the sub button for uploads every weekday as well as every Saturday. If you have any comments, feedback, concerns, anything of the sort, leave in the comment section below. I read all comments I get. I appreciate any all feedback you might have for me. If you want to chat or play games or anything like that, I have Discord. If you want to send a few bucks, I have a Patreon. If you want to see me do it live, I have a Twitch. That's about it for now, ladies and gentlemen. My name has been DB333, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.